Have you ever learned English in school and then spoken to a real person and thought, wait, why didn't anyone teach me this?
You studied grammar. You memorized vocabulary. You learned how to answer questions in class. But then one day, someone says something simple, like, I'm just hanging out, or I'll get back to you. And suddenly, you're lost.
If that sounds familiar, don't worry. You're not bad at English. You're just discovering something very normal.
There is a big difference between textbook English and everyday English.
I'm Maya.
And I'm James.
Welcome back to the Maya and James podcast, where we help you practice real English through real conversations.
In today's episode, we're talking about phrases English speakers use all the time, but that many learners never really study in school.
These are the kinds of phrases that make conversations feel more natural, more relaxed, and more real.
And by the end of this episode, you'll not only understand them better, you'll feel more confident using them too.
So let's get into it.
Maya, I think this is one of the biggest surprises for English learners. They spend years studying English, and then they realize that people in real life don't always speak the way textbooks do.
Yes, exactly. In school, English is often very clean and very controlled. The sentences are correct, complete, and easy to analyze. But real conversation is different. People speak more loosely. They shorten things. They change direction in the middle of a sentence. They use phrases that are difficult to guess if you've only learned formal English.
And I think that's why so many learners feel frustrated. Because they think, I studied this language for years. Why do everyday conversations still feel hard?
Right. And the answer is often not vocabulary size, it's familiarity. You may know a lot of words, but if you don't recognize the phrases people use every day, conversations can still feel fast and confusing.
That's a really important point. It's not always about learning more words. Sometimes it's about learning more natural patterns.
Exactly. And when you start noticing these patterns, your listening gets better, but your speaking changes too. You begin to sound less like a student answering a test question and more like a real person having a conversation.
So today, let's talk about some examples. What kind of everyday phrase do you think learners hear a lot, but often don't fully understand at first?
A very common one is, I'm just heading out.
Yes, that's such a natural phrase.
It really is. If someone says, I'm just heading out, they usually mean they are leaving now or about to leave. But if you translate it word for word, it may sound strange. You might think, heading where? Out where? But native speakers use it very casually.
Exactly. It's a phrase people use without thinking. I'm heading out now. I was just heading out. It simply means I'm leaving.
And that's what makes real English tricky sometimes. The meaning is simple, but the expression is not always direct.
Another one I hear all the time is no worries.
Yes, that's a great example. In school, learners are often taught to say, you're welcome, or it's okay. But in daily conversation, many people just say, no worries. And the feeling of that phrase matters too. It sounds light, relaxed, friendly. Exactly. If someone says, sorry I'm late, and you reply, no worries, it sounds natural and easy. It tells the other person, don't stress about it. I think that's one reason these phrases are so... Exactly. If someone says, sorry I'm late, and you reply, no worries, it sounds natural and easy. It tells the other person, don't stress about it.
I think that's one reason these phrases are so useful. They're not just about meaning, they're about tone.
Yes, tone is everything in conversation. Two phrases can have a similar meaning, but one sounds formal and the other sounds warm and natural.
And learners often want that second feeling. They don't just want to be understood, they want to sound comfortable.
Exactly.
What about phrases people use when they don't want to give a long answer?
Oh, there are so many. One that comes to mind is, it depends.
Simple, useful, and extremely common.
Yes. If someone asks, do you like working from home? A natural answer might not be yes or no. You might say, it depends. Then you explain. Maybe it depends on the job, maybe it depends on your mood, maybe it depends on the day.
And that's a phrase that makes your English sound more flexible, more real.
Exactly. Because real life is not always black and white. Native speakers often use short phrases like that to create space before giving a fuller answer.
That reminds me of another phrase, fair enough.
Yes, that's a very natural conversational phrase.
How would you explain it?
If someone says something reasonable, even if you don't fully agree, you can say, fair enough. It means something like, okay, I understand your point. That makes sense.
So it's not exactly agreement, but it shows respect.
Exactly. And that's why it's so useful in conversation. It helps people respond calmly and naturally.
I love phrases like that because they help a conversation move forward.
Yes, and that matters. A lot of natural English is not dramatic or advanced. It's made up of small phrases that connect ideas and keep the conversation flowing.
And this is where phrasal verbs start to show up everywhere too, right?
Absolutely. Phrasal verbs are a huge part of real spoken English. People use them constantly, often without realizing it.
Let's give 3 useful ones today.
Perfect. The first one is bring up.
Such a good one.
If you bring up a topic, you introduce it in conversation. For example, I didn't want to bring up money on the first day. Or she brought up an interesting idea during lunch.
And that's such a common thing in real life. We bring things up in meetings, in friendships, in family conversations.
Exactly. The second phrasal verb is figure out.
Another essential one.
If you figure something out, you find the answer or understand it. For example, I'm still trying to figure out how this app works. Or he figured out what the problem was.
And the third one?
The third one is come across.
That one is really useful, especially for learners who want to sound natural.
Yes, if you say someone comes across as friendly, confident, or nervous, you mean that is the impression they give. For example, she comes across as very calm, or I didn't want to come across as rude.
That phrase is so important because many learners care a lot about how they come across in English.
Exactly. They don't just want correct grammar, they want to sound polite, confident, and natural.
So why do you think school often doesn't focus on these kinds of phrases?
I think there are a few reasons. First, school has to teach structure. Grammar, reading, writing, and test preparation are easier to organize. Informal spoken English is messier. It changes faster, and it's harder to test.
That makes sense. It's easier to mark a grammar exercise than to teach someone how to sound relaxed in conversation.
Exactly. And also, many teachers want to give learners a safe foundation first. Formal English is a useful base. The problem is when learners stop there and never move into the language people actually use day to day.
So formal English is not wrong, it's just incomplete.
Yes, that's the perfect word, incomplete. If you only know textbook English, you may be correct, but you may not feel fully prepared for real-life conversation.
And that can affect confidence too.
Definitely. When people keep saying things you don't recognize, you start to doubt yourself. But often, the problem is not your level. The problem is exposure. You just haven't heard enough real spoken English yet.
I think that's encouraging because exposure can be improved. It doesn't mean you're incapable, it just means you need more contact with natural language.
Exactly. That's why podcasts, interviews, YouTube videos, and everyday dialogues are so valuable. They help you get used to the rhythm and wording of real speech.
So if someone wants to learn these everyday phrases, what's the best way to do it?
First, notice them. Don't try to learn 50 in one day. Just start paying attention. When you hear a phrase more than once, write it down.
So step 1 is awareness.
Yes. Step 2 is context. Don't just copy the phrase alone. Notice when people use it. Who says it? In what situation? What feeling does it carry?
That's so important because if you only know the translation, you still may not know when to use it.
Exactly. And step 3 is repetition. Use the phrase in a sentence about your own life. Say it out loud. Hear yourself using it. That helps it move from passive understanding into active speaking.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Let's take "it depends." Don't just memorize it. Use it. Say, do I like working late? It depends. Do I enjoy big cities? It depends. The more personal the sentence is, the easier it becomes to remember.
That's a great strategy because it makes the phrase useful immediately.
Exactly. And one more thing. Don't wait until you fully understand every informal phrase before using natural English. Start small. Use 1 or 2 new expressions each week.
That feels much more manageable.
Yes, and much more sustainable. Real fluency is not built in one big moment. It grows through small, repeated steps.
I think one of the hardest things for learners is feeling like their English is too formal, too stiff, or too careful.
Yes, and that feeling can be frustrating, but it's also a sign of progress. If you can notice that difference, it means your ear is improving. You're becoming more sensitive to natural English.
That's such a good point. Noticing the gap is actually part of growth.
Exactly. And you don't need to sound like a native speaker tomorrow. The goal is simpler than that. The goal is to sound a little more natural, a little more relaxed, and a little more confident over time.
So this is not about being perfect. It's about becoming more familiar with the language people actually use.
Yes, and the more real English you listen to, the less surprising it becomes. Over time, those phrases stop sounding strange. They start sounding normal.
And then one day, you use one without thinking.
Exactly, and that's a great feeling.
All right, let's go over 4 useful vocabulary words from today's episode.
The first word is frustrated. If you feel frustrated, you feel annoyed because something is difficult or not working the way you want. For example, I felt frustrated when I couldn't understand the conversation. Frustrated.
The second word is familiarity. Familiarity means knowing something so well that it feels normal and comfortable. For example, listening every day builds familiarity with natural English. Familiarity.
The third word is foundation. A foundation is the basic support something is built on. For example, grammar gives you a strong foundation for speaking. Foundation.
And the fourth word is exposure. Exposure means the experience of seeing or hearing something often over time. For example, the best way to improve listening is more exposure to real English. Exposure. Let's hear all 4 one more time. Frustrated. Familiarity. Foundation. Exposure.
Let's quickly review today's 3 phrasal verbs.
Bring up, to introduce a topic in conversation.
Figure out, to understand or solve something.
Come across, to give a certain impression to other people.
Try to use at least one of these this week. Now it's your turn.
We're going to ask you a question, and we want you to pause the video and answer out loud in English.
Try to use one phrase or phrasal verb from today's episode if you can.
Here are your 2 questions. What is one English phrase you hear often, but still find difficult to use natural?
And do you think your English sometimes sounds too formal? Why?
Pause the video now and answer in short, simple sentences.
Ready? Pause now. Great. Here's an example answer. One phrase I hear often is "no worries." At first I understood the words, but I didn't know when to use it naturally. I think my English sometimes sounds too formal because I learned mostly from books and school, not from real conversations. I'm trying to figure out how to sound more relaxed.
That's a strong, natural answer. Did you notice the phrasal verb in there?
Figure out. Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for spending this time with us today.
If this episode helped you, subscribe to the Maya and James podcast for more real English conversations every week.
And tell us in the comments, what English phrase do you hear all the time but never learned in school?
We'll see you in the next episode.
Until then, keep listening
Keep practicing.
and keep going. Take care.